Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to thank our senators working with the White House to get these nominees through the committee. I appreciate that very much. Today, President Biden's going to the border. Former President Trump's going to the border. I think we all know why they're going to the border. The border is an absolute national security nightmare. Senator Cornyn's from Texas. He knows it probably better than anybody else, Senator Cruz. So just for a few minutes here, the bipartisan bill on the supplemental, the immigration bill, appreciate the effort, a lot of good things in it. We had one cloture vote, then we moved on to the aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. What's been missing, Mr. Chairman, is a committee-driven process to try to find common ground to see if we can move the ball forward on a broken immigration system. In 2008, I believe it was, 13, I can't remember, I've been so many of these bills, the Gang of Eight, whenever that was, we had markup in committee, dozens, probably hundreds of amendments, a couple of weeks on the floor. I voted for the product, so did you. I stand behind that product, but the point is, we had a chance for this committee to kind of lead the Senate on immigration. We produced a product and went to the floor and it was amended heavily. I would recommend we try to do that. The president's current and former president are going to the border for a reason. On May 15th, 2023, the House passed H.R. 2. It's been over here with no action for a very long time. So I would urge you, Mr. Chairman, to take that bill or the Senate bipartisan bill or any bill you'd like, bring it to the committee and let's have a debate within the committee to see if we can pass something on immigration and send it to the floor and allow our colleagues to have a say so that we can kind of go back to the normal way of doing business in terms of trying to fix an immigration problem. And maybe the best example lately of why we need to do something is the death of Miss Laken Riley, beautiful young lady at the University of Georgia who was killed jogging. And everyone is presumed innocent in this country until proven otherwise. But the person being charged with her horrible death came to this country illegally and was paroled. Now, again, that person's entitled to a fair trial. We'll see what the system in Georgia does. But we do know this. We do know the person who's been charged with that crime came over in 2022 illegally at the border and received parole. What I want is an analysis of his case. Here's the law. The DHS Secretary may, on a temporary basis, as conditions may warrant, on a case-by-case basis, parole people in the United States based on two factors: urgent humanitarian reason, significant public benefit. So the gentleman that was charged with his murder, he was paroled. Secretary Mayorkas told me at an appropriations hearing, if I have his testimony, I'll enter it in the record, ask him, when somebody's paroled, is there an individual analysis required by law performed on each case? And he said yes. So what I want, and I hope the committee will back me up here, is an analysis in this case. What were the factors that led to him being paroled? Is there a written record? Is there an analysis that we can look at? I think you owe it, quite frankly, to the country. I wrote a letter to DHS that I will submit to the record. I'm expecting an answer. I think the family of Ms. Riley certainly deserves an answer. I think everybody in the country certainly deserves an answer. So our parole system was addressed in the bipartisan bill, but not in a way that was sufficient in my view. I, along with others, tried to make sure that DHS granted parole on a case-by-case basis with an individual analysis. Here's where we stand on parole in the Biden administration. 795,000 people paroled in FY22, 802,764 paroled in FY23. In calendar year 23, I think it was 997,000 people. How does that compare with past presidents? During the Obama-Trump presidency, the average number of people paroled into the United States per year was 5,623. The average for President Biden is 795,561. What's going on here? The law is being ignored, is being abused. The bipartisan bill did not address this. There needs to be a mandate from Congress reinforcing to DHS, stop blanket parole of people from Venezuela, Cuba, and other countries. You're violating the law. There's a court case in Texas about this. So I'll introduce into the record my letter to Secretary Mayorkas asking him about the information regarding the person charged with Ms. Riley's death. What were the factors considered to grant him parole in 2022? And I would urge this committee, after the visit by President Trump and Biden, current and former president, to take up some legislation as a base bill. It can be anything you would like, and see if the committee can find some common ground, report it to the floor of the Senate, and try to do something if we can. So, Mr. Chairman, the country is really in a crisis. There's enough fentanyl come across our border last year to kill everybody in the country. In the last 3 years, there have been enough fentanyl to come across our southern border to kill 5 billion people. There's been over 200 people come across the border on the terrorist watch list. The carnage related to a broken border is unbelievable. The leading cause of death of young people in this country is fentanyl poisoning coming across a broken southern border, mostly manufactured in China. I don't know how many people have to die. I don't know how much longer this has to go before we engage in a process that can get a result. I appreciate the bipartisan negotiations that took months. It was done behind closed doors. It's now time to have an open debate about how to fix a broken immigration system to try to save some lives if we can, and show the country that we can work together to fix a problem that I think deserves a solution. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I hope you will join me in insisting that DHS, Secretary Mayorkas, provide us information about why and how this individual was paroled. Thank you.
Let me say at the outset that in terms of this horrible case involving the person who was killed, we will, of course, make available to every member of the committee access to that information that helps them understand the case. We have to draw the line short of interfering in the prosecution of this case, and I'm sure the senator from South Carolina agrees with that. Let me also say that the senator from South Carolina made it crystal clear months ago, that there would be no defense supplemental bill without addressing border security. He was adamant in his request, and his request was certainly timely. The situation at the border demands a response from Washington and Congress. And as a result of his position, making it known here on Capitol Hill and across the country, there was established a bipartisan group to write a bill on border security. The Republicans insisted, and rightly so, that they wanted their own spokesman on that group, James Lankford of Oklahoma. I know James Lankford personally. I think all of us do, and respect him. He is a principled individual. We may disagree on issues politically, but I do believe he is an honest man and would be an honest broker in this process. Kyrsten Sinema joined in that, as well as Senator Murphy from Connecticut. And they put in not only hours, but days and weeks, perhaps months of effort to come up with a border security bill, and they did. I didn't like some provisions of it, but I understood that in this world we live in, compromise is an essential element to success. And we may have a majority in the Senate here, nominal majority. We still face a filibuster threat, even with that nominal majority. And so the border security bill was offered for the Senate to consider, a bipartisan approach, which I believe would have made positive strides towards dealing with many of the issues that the senator from South Carolina has just raised. We know what happened next. Donald Trump announced that he didn't want this bill to go forward. He went on to say, and explicitly quoted, said, "Blame it on me if the bill fails. I'm going to blame it on him." The decision not to even negotiate a bipartisan bill, but to stop cold in its tracks, is an edict from former president, which some people think very highly of. I don't. I think that bipartisanship, compromise, and attempt to make some progress is part of why we're here. So at this point, the senator from South Carolina says, let's have a hearing and a markup in this committee. Is Donald Trump going to rule that markup too and decide what comes out, if anything? I don't know the answer to that. But why in the world would we walk away from this bipartisan border security bill that has a chance of passage? Why isn't that the standard that we move on in terms of dealing with this unsustainable situation at the border? I'm willing to endorse that effort publicly, as I have before, because I think it's the right starting point. I respect James Lankford, I hope we all do, for the effort that he put into this on behalf of the Republican side. So we have more to say, I'm sure, in the days ahead about the border security situation.
I know, Senator Leaf, if I could just have a second here to respond. I want to get on with the markup, but this is important in this regard. Senator Durbin, we have worked together to produce products that pass the Senate, fail. I know how frustrating that is. The bipartisan bill had many good things. I want to compliment Senator Lankford and Sinema and Murphy. I was actually part of the group trying to find a way to put something together. I never envisioned that we would have one cloture vote and move on to the defense supplemental. It was clear to me sort of the fix was in from a leadership point of view. The parole provisions in that bill were insufficient to deal with the problem we have. And here's the sad thing. The problem is self-inflicted. President Biden could stop all this by just following the law. And he's chosen not to. Most of the things we need to fix in the short term were self-inflicted. Remain in Mexico was a policy that you had to wait in Mexico until your asylum hearing that could be 4 or 5 years away. Well, people didn't pay. They stopped paying thousands of dollars to sit in Mexico for 4 or 5 years. I went to the border like 2 weeks ago with Senator Scott. If you go, and I recommend you go, I think we should all go to Ukraine. I think we should all go to the border. The Border Patrol will tell you, and I'm sure Senator Cornyn will echo this, that 2 things could be done really quickly. Basically, deport some people so people will stop coming if they see people leaving, and go back to remain in Mexico. That would stop 70% literally overnight. Those 2 things can be done without any law being passed. As to trying to find a solution, I didn't think one cloture vote would be the end of the debate. It certainly wasn't in the past. As to President Trump, he believes we can wait. I don't. I'll gladly have him mark up here. I think we need to do something as soon as we can, but we got to actually address the core issues here. And I was told by Senator Lankford, when it comes to doing away with blanket parole, that's a non-starter. 30,000 people a month to parole from 4 countries under the current system without any individual basis. I'd like to have a chance to do something about that problem. If you don't, you're not going to fix the problem. So I'll end where I began. Let's use the committee like we've done in the past. Let's try something new and different. As to whether President Trump would support the product, I don't know. But I know this, the committee's a pretty capable group. If we can find some common ground here among this crowd, then I think you got something to work with.
So, Senator, I'm more than happy to